Appreciate all of you for joining us live right here. We do sincerely apologize for the delay in our official starting of time, but now we are here. We are so much excited. As you can all see, we have Dr. Pastor Shingi Munyeza live right here with us in the studio. Dr. Munyeza, Pastor Munyeza, how do I introduce you? I've known you for a long time.
Shingi Munyeza is fine.
I've never called him Shingi Munyeza. I've never called him Shingi. I've known you for a very long time, since our early inception days, and we're excited to have you, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tony, and good evening to your viewers, your audience, and it's good to be with you.
It's good to have you. Right, so let's start straight into this show. You are currently the talk of the town. Many Zimbabweans, they need to fully understand what's going on as far as Zimbabwe's political landscape is concerned. My first question to you, Dr. Munyeza, are you still part of the Presidential Advisory Committee?
Yes, I am.
You haven't been fired yet.
I am.
Okay, great. How is it so far, you as one of the members, how has it been in the PAC, or Presidential Advisory Committee, so to say? How has it been for you?
Well, I want to just start by clarifying, I'm not here as a PAC member, I'm here as Shingi Munyeza. So, because I'm not an official spokesperson for PAC, so I will not talk about PAC issues. The other thing is that, of course, as an advisor, you're under oath. So I just can't talk about PAC issues, but I can talk about national issues. Or any other issues, or church issues.
Fair and fine. Before we completely escape the PAC issue, I just want to understand, what do you think got you there? You're no longer speaking for PAC, you're speaking for you. What got you to be a PAC member? What do you think got you to be a PAC member?
I don't know. My own assumption is that I love my country, and there's probably some experiences I've acquired over the past maybe 3 decades in my active, whether pastoral ministry or active business journey that I've taken, and maybe that was put into consideration. But to be honest, I wasn't told exactly why. But and I don't think I'm the best.
Were you clear in terms of reference in exactly what you're supposed to do? Were you very clear on that?
Yeah, I'm very clear. But whatever I get involved in, I don't go it with. I jump in.
Right.
I go in with everything I've got.
Many people came against you, saying, why did you choose to become a part of the PAC? I remember some of your tweets where you quoted a lot of scriptures into why you were there, and some said you are being unequally yoked with non-believers. Do you still feel the same?
Oh no, I guess I can understand when people come from that background. We come from a very painful background at the moment. Zimbabweans are in pain. And we also come from a very toxic environment. At any turn, something you don't like, you almost have convulsions. You almost have, there's so much anger in all this. So I'm very cognizant of that background, and we're polarized. So, but what I get involved in is because there is instructive scriptural background to what I do. Because as a believer, as a Christian, I like to be informed by the Word of God. But I also want to be informed by the voice of God that comes through His people, that comes through my experiences, and the witness that is in my heart. Now, when you say, look, so is anything been changing? Well, I'm the salt of the earth, I'm the light of the world. How good is salt when it remains in the salt shaker? How good is light if you put it under the bushel? So for me, where the salt is needed most, I'll be there. Where the light is needed most, I'll be there. So I'm not a quitter.
So some felt that you were unequally yoked with unbelievers, and you
it's
were one of the enablers. How would you respond to this?
Oh yeah, well, if I can go, I I think that, first of all, the scripture of being unequally yoked, what it means is that we must never be in Zimbabwe and get involved in anything where there is no Christian.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a very wrong interpretation of scripture. So it is talking about marriage, it is talking about union. So those are and that's the reference point to that scripture you're referring to. Then you talk about enablers. It's not a bad thing to be enabler, because it's actually like you must enable for good. So, but it's just that we have a background of toxicity and pain. So if I come and try and help you and you are his enemy, guess what happens? Then
enemies.
So that's how we look at things. It's a binary. It's a binary focus that we have in the country. So it's either you are this or that.
One or zero.
There's no third part or fourth part street, and I understand that. So the enabler bit for me is the positive enabler. But I also don't think that I always have to explain every move I'm making.
No, that's right. In the public domain, people find you to be someone of a public interest. Hence the interest around you.
I understand. But I'm just saying I don't always have to have the desire to explain, because some things I can't also explain. Because people just think that when you're there you know everything. I don't. Sometimes I don't know. So when I can't even explain to you, it's because I don't know.
Okay.
And the thing is unfolding, so my life is not, I don't know my life in the next 10 years, what it will be like. So as it unfolds, I respond to it, but I pursue my purpose in God in whatever I do. So there are things I can explain, there are things I can't explain to you. Yeah.
Let's talk about things I know you can explain and you should be able to explain. We'll take you straight to one of the videos that is doing rounds as far as the social media is concerned. I think a crew behind the scenes will run us this quickly so that we get to talk about this.
Before we had COVID-19, our economy was already on its belly, suffering from hyperinflation, lack of productivity, food insecurity caused by drought and bad policy framework, policy inconsistency across the board, unprecedented corruption, a dearth of leadership. That means there is no leadership across the board. We have lost good, quality, solid, visionary, competent leadership. After the storm, we need to make a turn, but the turn has to assist us to deal with the stronghold of our time, the stronghold of Zimbabwe. 40 years later, look at where we are, a country living in squalor. There is a stronghold that has held us together like this. We've gone for 40 years. We've done everything we have done over the past 40 years. Look at where we are. The nations have tried to help us. We have tried to help ourselves. Look at where we are. There is definitely a stronghold in our nation that needs to be delivered. Post this, we need to confront this stronghold with a totally different approach. Because these people who perpetuate this, the endemic, systemic, and structural, corrupt and oppressive system, because they think that they own everybody else. So they come out and tell us that munotite chinu chedu. That is the height of arrogance of a system of an occult that believes that nobody else owns Zimbabwe except for a clique of few people. This is going to end because our God has come through. Our God has come to deliver us from this grip of a system sustained by strong men and strong women who are operating in the occult to oppress for their own selfish agenda because they come from a faulty thinking. This is going to end. Saints, rejoice because it's going to end. It's soon going to end. Because God has come through. Our God has, I'm excited in my spirit because God has come through for us. His time is up. You would be asking, where was God all this time? God's timing, remember, for the children of Israel, it was 430 years of oppression. But he came through. For us, it has been 40 years of going through all sorts of games, oppression, abuse, corruption, brutality as a nation. But our God has finally come through. He has come through. He's going to weaken and remove the system, the Egyptian system. But he's also going to deal a blow to the strong men and to the strong women. And how are these strong men and strong women going to be dealt with? How? Because today most of you guys, at least the church, has been asking, so how do we deal with the strongholds? So first of all, you deal with the strongholds from God dealing with the system that sustains this. But we also know that this system is sustained by strong men and strong women. Well, David must arise. King David must arise. David must come to the...
Let's talk about that. You spoke of the strongholds being in charge of the system, and the strongholds must come down. Enlighten us about this issue, because we need to fully understand, without us taking any guess, what exactly was going on in your mind. What exactly did you mean by this?
Well, I was, you must understand, this was a church service, eh?
Uh-huh.
So I'm talking from a basis of scripture and basis of what strongholds are. It's a faulty thinking. It is which then informs a set of values, which then forms a behavior pattern, and then the behavior pattern moves on to traditions and habits. So that's broken down. That's a stronghold. Spiritual powers for the purposes of perpetuating their power agenda. And that power agenda is only to sustain their own selfish agenda. At the very end, it subjugates you and me. We are just slaves in that system. So you find it biblically, whether it was the children of Israel under Pharaoh, whether it was the children of Israel even under Saul, and so on, and the kings, they had those sort of problems under the Babylonian rule, when they were taken into captivity. Those are the systems that I'm talking about. Even when Jesus arrives on the scene, the Romans were in charge of the Jews at that time. Mm-hmm. So it then becomes a stronghold, but in our case, it is a system that is anchored into the occult. So which beats logic, which beats common sense, which beats reason. So when you're supposed to go and say, look, this is the direction we must go into, that system tells you must go there. So for example, it is a system that tells you that we're in a bad state, our people are sick, we need to make sure that the hospitals are working. So I'm talking about the system, in that system then says, okay, well, if we can agree with the doctors here, and if the doctors can, if the doctors also can agree with the government, guess what? Let's close the hospitals. So we then close hospitals. Who does that in this day and age? So it is a system that is a faulty thinking. So when you actually analyze it and say, look, we as a country, end of last year, we shut our major hospitals. What reasoning is that? So what common sense is that? So it must come from a power base that is faulty. Yeah. That's my reasoning. So you cannot just attribute it to one person. It is a whole structural, systemic behavior that tells you don't go right, but go left. When right is the way, you still want to go left. So, yeah, I hope that explains it.
How do they check advice? I know you are there for a reason. How do they then check the advice, or should I say maybe the lights, to say, no, but this is not ethical, this cannot be it, this is not the Zimbabwe that we want. How do you then What kind of responses do you get after you?
I'm not talking about. So I'm not talking about my own. This is not my reflection of Park. I'm talking about at a national level.
No, I understand.
So
it
doesn't matter whether you say how do you, it is actually you. How do you, when you go to a school, a university, a clinic, a business, we all caught up in this system that does not want to do right.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we get possessed with something that says, look, we're supposed to do it this way. Why are we doing it this way? We're supposed to distribute PPEs for COVID for free. Why are we selling it? Yeah. That's the system. We're supposed to fix our roads before we get any traffic on the road. But we buy brand new cars and brand new everything, the roads are not fixed. So what starts first? Mm. So that logical thinking does not it doesn't come through. So then you have to question, why are we behaving like that? And then you realize that it is coming from a source that is faulty. People, grown-up men, will go and consult a Shikiro about how their businesses should run. This is somebody who's got an MBA.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
So that's my problem.
Yeah.
So I do struggle. So at the end of the day, you've got to go to the base of it and say, look, we've got to address. Now, in the past, we thought that it is about dealing with you as Tony.
Yeah.
So let's get rid of you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't deal with the entirety, because then it has informed a certain value system. So we're going to undo this value system or value proposition with a new value proposition. Mm-hmm. So you and I are able to differ without screaming at each other.
It is an important stage.
Without personalizing. So when I call about the system, I'm trying to make sure that people don't just see individuals. But I also go further to say, then there are strong men and strong women who sustain such a system now. So that we don't look at it in a hairy-fairy out there, oh, well, maybe it's a system, but I'm not responsible. There are people who actually sustain such a thinking. In our midst, in business, in civic society, in our schools, in our hospitals, at a government level, in our politics. You look at the activities that are happening in our political space. In the height of COVID, the pandemic that has messed up the whole world, we are not united as a people to actually just deal with it first. But the political games continue.
There
unabated.
There was strong hope. I remember this freshly and very clearly. I was beside you in November 2017. We marched together, and there was so much hope, excitement towards Zimbabwe coming in a new dawn coming through for our nation. And I remember I marched for a very long distance side by side with you, and we were hoping for a brighter future and that things would be okay. Where did we miss it as a nation, and why are we where we are right now?
But it's because we didn't deal with, we continued to turn left when we were supposed to turn right. So we didn't deal with the fundamentals of what had happened there. When I went back into it, and that is the hindsight wisdom. So none of us always know exactly what is right and what is wrong at all times. This is part of what I was telling you at the beginning. So what should have happened is just we should have gathered together at that juncture.
Correct.
And agreed to where the country was going. Because that event was not done at a political party level, it was done at the national level.
Correct.
So there should have been an inclusive approach to say this is how we must do. So it ended up being a political party initiative when it had been engineered or when it had been ushered in as a national event. Mm-hmm. Now, on that same thing, it is also important to note that we are also building on a foundation that we're not established yet. So we perpetuated the very same things that we were trying to fight up to November 2017. So we carried on as if nothing had happened. So guess what? 9 months later, or 8 months later, we find ourselves with an election, and guess what begins to happen with that election? We have, post that election result being announced, we have violence. So that's exactly what we had.
And here we are, 3 years down the line, 2017, 2020 today, we are not turning the wheels. They seem to have been slowly turning. Specifically, I know there was a lot of hope, the international community, people looked into Zimbabwe. There were many people who were willing to give us a chance, and many people were willing to even give the political administration a chance. How do you see, let's speak about the political administration before we also look at it from the local, from lower levels. There was high hope that Zimbabweans thought that we would give the political administration a chance, and many Zimbabweans honestly believed in giving the political administration a chance. And to where we are right now and what's going on in Zimbabwe, what's your projection and how do you see us?
I go back to what I was saying. What I was saying is that we needed to make sure that we had agreed on the founding values of what is now termed as the Second Republic. Because if we didn't do that, we would end up with a certain value proposition that we did not expect to have at that particular time. And then we have progressed at a political level with the same behaviors. We're talking about intolerance, we're talking about the rule of law, we're talking about rights and freedoms being denied, we're talking about economic policy inconsistency, we're talking about now the mismanagement of our resources, corruption. All these things here ended up just becoming worse down the road. So that's what has happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I need to take you back to one of the clips as well that you recently posted, and then we discussed. But I think for the benefit of our viewers, I think we're going to drop this clip so that we discuss issues that you are talking about. And I need to have a certain perspective all together as Zimbabweans so that we fully understand what your thoughts are like, because you are definitely an influencer. We cannot afford to ignore you in as much as you think that we may allow you to go off this, but you're a very important person. Whatever you say, a lot of Zimbabweans are thinking about this, and they need to fully understand exactly what is going on in your mind when you say some of these things. But before we jump to that clip, while our crew is getting it ready, I need to understand a lot of things, Dr. Munyeza. Right now, as a nation, Zimbabweans, we need to know, are we going to come out of this situation and what needs to be done right now? We have indicated left while we turn right. You have said that clearly. But here's where we are right now. I'll ask you from different perspective, politically mainly. That's where the main game is right now. What do we need to be doing as a nation to come out of this?
First and foremost, we need to agree that we have turned the wrong direction. So we all need to say we have taken a wrong turn.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about this wrong turn. We've gone the wrong turn since we started. What exactly do we do that you think
First
we've
of
turned the
all,
wrong turn? Yeah.
our values are wrong.
Yeah.
The way we relate to one another is wrong. For example, where in the world we have the MPs, the girls that went missing and they come back, they are tortured, they are traumatized, and it's all, people are accusing this. Where in the world do you get such? At some point they were with the police and then they were no longer with the police. How does that work? So our values are wrong. So I no longer have to be almost angry because we are operating from a faulty base. Our values are completely wrong. So we need to underpin, or we need to start from a correct value base. So we've taken the wrong turn because our values are indicating in that direction anyway. It doesn't matter whether we should be going here, but our values are saying we are wired to take this direction. So we have piles of economic policy documents in this country. Over the past 20 years, when I've been actively involved in resuscitating this economy, at every turn I've been involved to try and assist so that the operating environment, so that the economy where we would run our businesses and have our livelihoods is a much better place to operate from. But guess what? The moment you have this document, it then takes another direction. So it has always been inconsistent. There's also, and that is a sign that our values are wrong. But the next thing is that our leadership is wrong. The way we see leadership in this country is one of command and control. Nations that eventually prosper is that there must be a two-way. They must also have a servant leadership, but they must, more importantly, it must be a leadership that is accountable. So we have a leadership across the board. That's why there's corruption. Corruption is rife here, not just because of anything. It is because we have a leadership style that does not want to account for itself, that does not even want to be held accountable. Now, don't even just think about government. Move to churches. You will find pastors, bishops, apostles, prophets, whatever you call them, evangelists, papas, and major ones and twos and threes. These men generically do not want to put themselves into account, particularly when we're talking about financial accountability. So they might not want to be accountable. So the values are wrong. Their leadership is wrong. But what should be happening now is to actually admit the way we have been doing things is wrong. The way we have led one another is wrong. Even the followership, you and I, is following certain leaders. The way we follow leaders, we worship them. We see them as our heroes and they are gods. We create them into demigods. So we don't need to get to there.
Is that human nature when you get into desperate situations that then drive us to then look out for such solutions? Because this usually happens to more deprived people when you are...
It just is informed by a faulty thinking. So if you come to me with a desperation, you are the one who is vulnerable to me. The issue is not about me now taking advantage of you. Yes, I must still serve you. I must still be able to help you. So because we come from a faulty thinking where somebody who's desperate is now an opportunity for me to oppress, to subjugate, to abuse. Instead, when somebody is vulnerable, it is my opportunity to save them and to lift them up. Now, that thinking is not part of us. It's not part of us. At a leadership level. So what do we need to do? So we need to come back into the same room like what we should have done in 2017. To say, how do we want to relate one with another? Remember, Zimbabweans have got wounds going back 40, 50, even a century ago.
Correct.
Colonization, apartheid system, and even the war of independence, post-independence, political violence, the Gukurahundi situation in Matebeleland that still has not been resolved. All these things, all these punctuations in our journey tells us that we are a wounded people that need healing. Because the way we relate with one another, we are like a bent child, always reactive and no longer proactive on a situation because we are hurting.
Yeah.
So yeah.
We've got two major political parties in Zimbabwe, which many Zimbabweans have entrusted as far as turning around our situation is concerned. What's your take on our solutions coming from these two political parties? And how do you...
Because of polarization, we've all become polarized between the two political parties. So we don't embrace nationhood, yeah, even when we play the politics at a party level. whatever we do is that it must, if I'm from part A and you're in part B, my job is to destroy part A or party A. And your job is to destroy party B, where I belong. So, 1 minute I am saying your party A must go. On your side you are saying party B must go. So there is no healthy engagement about our politics. It's poisonous. We've been in a real civil war. I'm telling you, the way we behave, we've been in a civil war for all these years. For at least 2 decades, if not longer, we have been in a civil war. Because we've been looking at
this lost loves, because we need to move.
Now, I've just told you, the part is that we need to find ourselves and we need to heal first. So that when we play our politics, we must play our politics to the limitation that says, when we are now talking about national issues, we forget our party politics. Yes. But we don't do that. When we are playing our political parties, they supersede national issues. They supersede patriotism. So we just go for it. We go for the jugular. As long as I destroy you, that's it. But if we sought the engagement that says this healthy tension that we must have must build our country. Now we see that. We see that even next door in South Africa. The way the ruling party relates to the opposition parties, right, and vice versa. The way the opposition parties play with the ruling parties. I think, I'm not saying that is a perfect example to refer to, but at least it's better than our situation.
We've seen a lot of correlation in them working together, yes, the ruling party and the opposition, even Malema, they've done a lot together as a government. And it brings me to a very important issue before we go to your video. I need to understand, do you feel that maybe a situation we had during Changirai, like the GNU, probably can help us? Because at a certain point in time in our history, that was the only time when we all completely forgot of ZANU-PF and MDC, as far as I remember my life. Do you think that we probably need to have something like a GNU? Like a GNU, a transitional union, a transitional government, a transitional period, or anything like that, because the animosity is there, it's real, it's big, and it's bad. And the only time we had peace as Zimbabweans was the only time when we had a GNU. Would you, in your mind, proffer that as a solution?
I think that because of the crisis that we are walking into right now, and let me just be very sober about this, because sometimes we think this crisis is emergent. We have an economy that has been on its belly for the past few years. We have a drought that has been on us, in fact, 2 consecutive droughts. Food shortages, or rather food insecurity. We go on to have COVID-19. We are unable to help ourselves out of this without a lot of funding from outside. The globe has kind of caved in. So there is not much foreign direct investment, there's not much exports, yet we need to import food. So all these things are playing into what I call a perfect storm. Our economy is so much informal to the point that the mom and pop, particularly our women who go across border to buy wares to feed their families, they're not able to go there because now we are in a quarantine zone. We cannot travel. So how are we going to survive? So that alone is a cause for concern for any leader, who then must call for an indaba to say, come, let's all reason together. this is our situation. Let's move away from all our hostilities, our disagreements, our our differences. Let's get together. So if then that happens, it will then inform the solution that comes after that. So I'm trying to run away from a prescription that says we need a GNU. Because those are the mistakes we've had. Whilst the GNU was good to cool off a country that was overheating, we didn't carry through what we should have done then, because Zimbabwe needs a cooling period to reset ourselves and reboot ourselves. So if we don't have that period, we will have the tendency of just carrying on business as usual, which is what we did in 2017. So we needed a cool-off time where we are rewiring, resetting our whole foundation of how we need to operate as a country. And then we move from there. We've not done that. So I don't know whether it is a GNU or whatever you might call it, but I can tell you what it is. We need a cool-off period where we're not always throwing stones at each other.
Some have said that the MDC alliance should embrace and should join the current talks that they're already having. Do you think that is the best way forward for the MDC to join Poland as a way out?
I can't, because I don't know what happens in Poland, by the way. So I don't know.
As a Zimbabwean.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying I don't know the dynamics there.
Yeah.
I think that Poland is a political dialogue. Now, for me, I believe I've been a proponent for dialogue for the longest part of 5 years. So we need to dialogue because of what I'm talking about, so that we agree on the values. The time that we dialogued and got together and got a result was when we did the Constitution. So we need to do the same thing. But if you then put politicians to decide for me from church or for me from business, you're getting it wrong. So we must have political dialogue, we must have church dialoguing, we must have business dialoguing there, we must have young people particularly, and the women must actually be given preeminence in these dialogues. Now, your question is that should MDC join them or not? I think that is neither here nor there, because when you start getting the momentum for dialoguing, whoever should be there will find the value to join. Now, if there's no momentum and a result out of people getting together, then there might not be any reason for anybody to join, number one, but there might not be any reason for anybody to continue in that conversation. So I can't judge because they've got their own value proposition. I also think that that is a political dialogue. It is not inclusive. It's not inclusive because it doesn't include people in business, it doesn't include people in church, it doesn't include young people, it doesn't include women.
But they would argue that we've called in pastors too many times. I'm sure we've seen them on TV being paraded that the various church leaders are in consultation with the president, etc. I think, if my memory serves me, 2 or 3 such events have happened, and they've also called in some CEOs of various companies. Wouldn't that be a very good alibi for them to say, but we have called in these guys before, the church has been represented to us, the business has been represented to us, and the only person who's not coming is Nelson Chamisa, so we're going on like it's business as usual.
We need also to disabuse ourselves of pointing at personalities. And that's my clarion call. We must move away from this approach of it must be an individual. Why can't it be a collective? With one who is amongst us in equal amongst many, or the number one amongst equals. But we don't have to always measure on an individual. But let me get back to your question. So you say, well, we've got a few business people, church people. I'm not talking about a tokenism of a dialogue. This is where we get it up. And actually the people that you don't want to be in that table, to be on that table. For example, if I was to be asked to to posture or to prescribe or to give advice for what should be political dialogue. And I'm talking about a political dialogue, not a youth dialogue, not a women's dialogue. So let's talk about a political dialogue. The reason why you are in dialogue is that you have differences.
Correct.
So if you're in dialogue for differences, it means that the people you differ with must be on the table.
Yes.
Every one of them. Now, you're talking about the leader of MDC being Nelson Chamisa, he should have been there and so on. I go further than that. It also means other political players who might be here in the country or outside the country, because you don't want anybody to be living out there and always wishing they could destroy this thing so that they also are ahead. So you need people on the table. So then you say, from now onwards, are we going to put the national interest first?
Yes.
Because we've now agreed on this point. Because if you don't agree on that point, you will walk away there, and what you're thinking of is to destroy this very thing that we think we must own. This is how Zimbabwe has been destroyed. It has been destroyed by saying, if I'm not involved, I must destroy it.
Correct.
If I'm not part of this thing here, it cannot
succeed. Yeah.
It can't succeed. So that politics is wrong. So we need to dialogue with our, call them adversaries, opponents, but these are brothers and sisters from the same, we are just driven by different angles of political interest, but when it comes to national interest, we must be united. It goes back to the faulty thinking that, for example, the nominations of people to go on Heroes Acre, that should never be a political party decision. Because it's a national decision. So there should be a committee, there should be a board that whenever we think that there is a consideration, which is representative. Their names when people die, because we are so consumed by making sure that they are declared heroes, then they are submitted. Tony is passed on, God forbid, not so soon.
No, far from it.
So we need to submit his name for consideration, to be accorded hero status. But at the same time, it mustn't be a clique of Tony's friends that choose that. There must be a criteria, but there must also be custodians of that criteria. So that's what dialogue brings. Dialogue brings a holistic, collective of values that you all subscribe to in your differences, in your diversities. So that's what I would think. But the political dialogue, it can carry on. It's one part of dialogue. It's not the end all and the
do you think, before we run to this video, do you think what's happening in the Pollard has the potential or capacity to turn around the fortunes of this nation?
Tony, I've already told you, it is part of a dialogue.
It's been going on.
It's part. If it is part and if it's not holistic, it won't move far. It's part of a conversation that is going on there. Because I don't know what's going on there, I can't judge by what it is supposed to do, because I don't know. But it is part of a dialogue. It is not the dialogue. Because other stakeholders in the nation are not involved in dialogue.
Sorry, I'll put you on the spot here. Do you think that, I understand you've mentioned very strong values as far as Zimbabweans think. Do you think that our biggest problem is an issue of us fixing our economics, or it's an issue of us first fixing our politics? Because many people have argued, especially on the political arena, saying we do not really have an economic problem, or the way we relate socially. We have a big political problem that needs to be fixed first. Let's fix the politics, then everything else is going to be right. What's your thoughts towards this?
My thoughts go back. I'm going to sound like a broken record. Let's fix our values first, because they inform our politics. Because when you say let's fix our politics, what do you mean? What I'm saying is that we must get to the table and say, look, the way you react to me as a political opponent, it's not a good value. It comes from a faulty thinking. So whether that's what you mean, that but these values go beyond just the politics.
Mm-hmm.
It goes to the way we relate with one another in communities, the way we run our businesses, what our kids are taught at school, the way we relate with outsiders in other nations, and how we look at posterity, that kids after, generations after us, what do they benefit of? We don't. There is no plan to leave a better future for our kids.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't that plan.
Correct. Okay, let me take you back to this video quickly so that we get to discuss about one of your videos that you've posted again recently on social media.
Perfect storm. We need to deal with something bigger. We have to leave this mountain of strongholds and move to God's promises. This nation has strongholds that it needs to deal with. Let's not waste time, the coming storm. And before we had COVID-19, our economy was already on its belly, suffering from hyperinflation, lack of productivity, food insecurity caused by drought and bad policy framework, policy inconsistency across the board, unprecedented corruption, a dearth of leadership. That means there is no leadership across the board. We have lost good, quality, solid, visionary, competent leadership. After the storm, we need to make a turn, but that turn has to assist us to deal with the stronghold of our time, the stronghold of Zimbabwe. 40 years later, look at where we are, a country living in squalor. There is a stronghold that has held us together like this. We've gone for 40 years. We've done everything we have done over the past 40 years. Look at where we are. The nations have tried to help us. We have tried to help ourselves. Look at where we are. There is definitely a stronghold in our nation that needs to be delivered. Post this perfect storm, we need to deal with something bigger. We have to leave this mountain of strongholds and move to God's promises. This nation has strongholds that it needs to deal with. Let's not waste time, the coming storm, and just get on the other side and then come back and business is as usual. Saints, it must never be business as usual after this storm. Never. We must never again go back to where we were. As you're locked down there, you cannot go back to the same person that you were before you checked in and before you went through the storm. As we go into this storm, I want to encourage you to go through a transformation, a change, a complete transformation of everything around you. And I'm speaking this into our nation too, that Zimbabwe cannot continue on this squalor behavior. We must make the turn so that generations to come will say, look, it is in that year, the 40th year, when we were struck with coronavirus, we made a turn. We handled our legion. Our forefathers and our forebears could not handle it anymore, so they made the turn.
COVID-19, a dearth of leadership, our inability to dig ourselves out of a hole we are plunging or we are already in. So that's the storm. So we need to come together before this thing here becomes a mess and people begin to lose everything that they've got and lives being lost. That is my warning. If we don't do that, we're gonna suffer a whole lot more.
You have challenged leadership and the way leadership is running this company, this country, across companies, private, and mainly also the political arena. Just out of interest, Dr. Munyeza, do you at all feel threatened, especially when you challenge the system and the political systems and the players in Zimbabwe? Does that make you feel threatened?
No, I don't. It doesn't cause any flinches in me to say, oh, by the way, what's going to happen to me? No, I don't operate in fear. I operate in faith. Because I make certain moves. So if it is in business, I make moves that say, look, if I do this, there's actually a good chance that I will lose money. And I've lost money in business. But I never look back and start crying and saying, oh, I shouldn't have lost money. If I could have, I just move on. But I also don't come away and think, well, I'm going to lose money, so I'm not going to do it. So the moment it is clear in my mind, it's clear in my spirit that I must do this thing, I will do it without fear. So for whatever I stand up for, let me just tell you, there's a lot of things that I don't talk about because I don't want to be a superhero for somebody out there and think that I'm their savior. I'm not. In terms of working and providing my own services, my sacrifice and my own passion for this country, it has not been, we all talk about PAC now because we think that PAC is the one that is there. I've had a tendency to do that. At the height of land redistribution exercise 2000, 2001, 2002, tourism fell apart. We had to go right around the globe and make sure we advertise, we talk, we market with our own resources. We went around.
You used to run a group of hotels then, I remember.
Yes, but I'm just talking about at that time we had to do that. Then we ran out of foreign currency and we needed to start a diaspora fund for the diasporans to bring in money back home. We had to put structures in, the whole thing about all these money transfer agencies and so on to establish it. I'm one of the founding directors of HomeLink, which established that whole thing. We went around the whole world with Governor Gono at that time, and a whole team of us. We were abused in the UK. We were abused in the United States. I was stoned by Zimbabweans being accused that why am I trying to help this government that has gone rogue? But my answer was, because we need foreign currency, we have no medication in our hospitals, we still have people that are going to die. So we must be able to talk. My journey has been, if we can get to the table and all talk, we'll find all the solutions on the table. So that was one. Later on, in 2014 and in 2015, we went around the globe again, talking to the Europeans, EU, and Washington, the United States, for them to drop the sanctions that are on this country. The EU dropped those sanctions when 10 of us went there as business people. Our own money, our own resources, facilitated obviously by the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the ambassadors of those countries. So in this whole journey, when you see me coming to this, I am just saying there is places that we must actually put our sacred. So I don't get afraid. So when you ask, well, are you afraid? So when I get vilified because I've joined a PAC, I'm not afraid of that. Because the motive of me joining there is not for my own personal gain.
What is still there? We'll need to open up our lines quickly. I'll have to rush because we're already out of time. Dr. Munyeza, we need to understand that many people have joined PAC and people have joined PAC for financial benefits. I need to understand how much are you getting paid from this PAC?
That's not true. People who are in PAC didn't join it for financial benefits. Number one, not $1 comes to us.
All of you?
All of us. None of us gets paid a cent.
You've got other benefits?
Not even one benefit, not even transport benefit. Not even fuel. Not even food when we meet. We pay our way through it. It's a fact.
Some people would then point you to say you are helping a government that some people perceive to be the oppressing one.
So we must all leave the country then, because we are supporting the same government. So you can't work in civil servants, as civil servants, would you? You can't be a teacher. You can't be a permanent secretary. I'm coming in there with no money that you're paying me as a citizen yourself. I'm not elected. I'm trying to give advice so that our country can move forward. But I'm not getting a personal benefit. How do you even... This is where I say we've got a faulty thinking. That thinking does not exist amongst us. That you've analyzed that this person is not getting any personal gain. They are not benefiting anything. They are not being paid.
Was it a matter of, sorry, I'll push you back. It came as a surprise to me. Was it a matter of choice to all of you that you don't want to be paid, or some of you chose not to be paid?
That was a founding value. That was a founding value that we don't want to be paid. That's how you sort faulty thinking. We always want to get into something because we must benefit out of it.
Correct.
Now, I have not taken anyone's donkey. That's why I can go out in public and say, look, I have not taken, I don't have a farm. I don't need one because I'm not a farmer. But what was I there for? That if I contributed for the common good, even my good will come through, maybe not in this season, but in the next season. I live in a better country, which functions well, which has got electricity, which has got running water, which has got all these things there, which has got a health system that works. That's all I want. I don't want, this is not about just me making another billion or another million or whatever it is. This is about going about my own business and know that I can park there, I can go into a service station and not having to queue because there's fuel there. Countries neighboring us enjoying that sort of lifestyle. What happened to us? What happened to us with all the gold, all the platinum, all the chrome, all the fertile soils? What happened to us? So I just want a functioning, basically functioning all right. I'm not impressed with a lot of things at my age now. I just want a normal life where I can just relax. Get to know that this country is ours and I have a part to play, but I've also benefits that I know they are accruing to me. Where young people can aspire to do great things, like in other countries. Now, our young people in this country, guess what they do? The first thing they do is that they want a passport to leave.
Get out of the country. That brings me back, Dr. Munyeza, to one of the issues that we have been controversially quoted, the issue on sanctions, where you have rightfully said that even some people even stoned you when you try to do good for the same country. I need to understand something. Are we clear as a nation, in as much as we all don't need sanctions and we need to move on and prosper as a nation? How much are we serious about making sure that we remove whatsoever that may be as well attracted and caused the sanctions to come place to Zimbabwe? Is that message very clear in your own way? Is it clear to those in the powers that be that we also have to deal with what has initially caused the sanctions, in as much as was one and gone? Because that has been used as an alibi to say they can't go because they've been caused by A, B, C, and D. Is there willpower to work on what has caused the sanctions to come to Zimbabwe first, and then we see what happens after that?
So there are two types of sanctions. It's the sanctions that America and Europe had imposed on us or have imposed on us, because Europe have removed their sanction on us. America still has it there. Those are sanctions. However, one wants to describe them because at GNU, and I was part of private sector assisting and working with the government at that time. At GNU, the entire government, including the late Prime Minister Morgan Tsvangirai, went to the United States to say we must remove these sanctions.
Correct.
So the issue of sanctions should never be debated that do we have them or do we not have them. It's there. Now, we've got to go back and say to ourselves, if they wanted to remove them in the era of GNU 2009 to 2013, the entire government there for 5 years, they wanted to remove the sanctions because it was an agreed upon position. Was it because it was part of being expedient or it was the right thing to do? So that reasoning is not there because people are playing politics now. They're not putting national interest in that. So that is one type of sanction. So those sanctions, let me also tell you what sanctions do. Sanctions, because they they go for those in power more. Like you look at the OFAC list, it targets the people that are in political leadership, mainly, and others. What they mean, it fortifies their position to be corrupt, to be abusive, because that's the only way they can protect their power now. So when you hit the sanctions button more, the person who's sanctioned abuses the very person that you think must not lose the plot or must not lose in the sanctions. Mm-hmm. So you will need to work. It is a balancing thing. Now let's talk about the other sanctions. The other sanctions are the human rights abuses, the freedoms that have been curtailed, which we have put upon ourselves by those who are in power and those who are ruling. That then shows that we have another problem. So what triggered which one? What triggered the sanctions was our own abuses. But there is another angle to the sanctions that are, the first ones that I talked about, was they were triggered by the land reform program. Now there is a SADC tribunal, which if we were to repeal ZDL, we've got to deal with the SADC tribunal that says you must return the land back to the white farmers. If it's not, we must compensate them. That is another issue. So are we able to do that? Now our constitution now says we can only compensate the former owners of these farms for improvements. The land is now the state's. So those are the intricacies of it. But what can we deal with right now? What we can deal with is remove the sanctions we put on each other. Because that we have control over it.
Correct.
So the human rights abuses, we must play by the rule of law. The freedoms, play by the rule of law. Our own values, then I go back to our values. The way we relate with each other is actually there in the preamble of the Constitution. Our values are inculcated there. But we don't even live according to our values. We don't even want to abide to our Constitution in certain matters. That's why investors are a little bit hesitant to come and invest here because they think we will indicate right, but we're going to turn left.
It's not a big trust issue now.
Yes. So yes, so talking about sanctions, there are two types. Sanctions imposed on us, but the sanctions we have imposed on each other. The sanctions we must work on tirelessly to remove is the ones we have imposed on each other.
Do you think that message is being heard loud and clear?
I don't think that it should be heard. The issue is that the fact that you don't understand that you need to treat each other as human beings, now it's not a message anymore. So it means that we've got a faulty thing. This is the message, the clarion call. We need to reset our values. For me to tell me that you must treat me properly, and then you say that message is not getting me to me clear, so I'm going to keep bashing you. What kind of people are we? What kind of people are we? You can't even resettle this to an Ubuntu. Forget about any complexities, any sophistication about this. You just need to behave as human beings. What happened to that? So that's my question. So you can't say, is this message being heard? I don't think that we need to go up in a mountain and tell somebody. We just need to get into a room and say, look, we all know that this is wrong. Because when you and I sit on a one-on-one, how come we actually know what is wrong? How come when we get out of here, we do that which is wrong? And that's my point.
Let's speak about corruption. We're going to be opening up our lines in the next few seconds. Dr. Corruption, you have spoken about corruption, and many people are speaking about corruption as a cancer that has killed Zimbabweans. in Zimbabwe at large. A lot of abuses happened. I want to keep this focus now at political level. How bad have you seen this, and how bad have you witnessed this, especially in public institutions, because we should hold everyone accountable?
Yeah. Corruption is a result of our values that have gone wrong or gone wrong. Because the foundation of our corruption starts from the very thing I was talking about. That the way we found each other in terms of our value proposition is informed by our thinking. So you look at the entitlement is part of at the core of corruption. Because corruption is driven by entitlement. But also because it says, I am man, I'm more entitled than a woman. And this tribe, I'm more entitled than that tribe. I am older, I'm more entitled than the younger. So
a season that we should just pass through, and all is going to be well, and we shouldn't be worried about the political situation in Zimbabwe.
So give me the season that we passed and then it became better. Just wind back. There's nothing. So we've been getting worse. So you can't keep saying, well, we pass through and it gets better. It passed through and it gets better. No. We got to do something now so that it doesn't get worse. But guess what? Yeah. Because of where we are as a globe, as the world, a situation, if it is going to be worse in America.
I'll cut you off so that we just take callers. Right? Caller, thank you so much for joining us. May you please kindly introduce yourself?
Hello, sir.
May you kindly introduce yourself and tell us where you're calling us from?
My name is Dr. Chinyanya Waterford.
Please go ahead with the contribution. Dr. Munyeza is listening.
Okay, I have a question.
Go ahead, sir.
Since we tried several things, like elections, like marching, so what's the way forward? What's the best way we can do in order to rectify our economy? What do we need to do like now?
Okay. Well, it's probably, I'm going to just emphasize what I said earlier on. So Zimbabwe needs to cool off so that we agree on how we're going to manage our country. We are not in agreement. The ones who are outside wants to destroy the country. The ones who are inside are still wanting to destroy the country. The ones who are in power continue to destroy it through corruption. The ones who are outside are not cooperating so the country can move forward. So we need a cooling off period where we all agree. That's why the flicker of hope happened when you were referring to GNU. But GNU was when we sat together and say we can't carry on with this toxicity. We need that season, but this time we must do a reset button on how forever we are going to relate with one another, our value proposition, and from there how our economy is going to be run, how our societies and our communities are going to be run, and how we relate to the rest of the world. It needs a cooling off period. How long that period is, it is a result of a dialogue.
So some are still arguing, and let me just take back the words from the opposition. They say that we have a political stalemate out of the last election that we spoke about, and that is the
Before we had COVID-19, our economy was already on its belly, suffering from hyperinflation, lack of productivity, food insecurity caused by drought and bad policy framework, policy inconsistency across the board, unprecedented corruption, a dearth of leadership. That means there is no leadership across the board. We have lost good, quality, solid, visionary, competent leadership. after the storm, we need to make a turn, but that turn has to assist us to deal with the stronghold of our time. The stronghold.
As far as the elections are concerned right now,
2018. Just now it will be 2 years. And we are almost going to be approaching the next election. At what point do we move on and say, look, let's all agree that this was not, so how do we stop this thing that happened in 2018 to happen in 2023? For me, that is where the work should be more, because what's gone under has actually gone under. It's water under the bridge. So what we need to do is to now start working and say, well, how do we make sure that what happened in 2018 does not recur? Now, that work is not happening because people are still wanting to correct 2018.
And they're saying we cannot have a 2023 if we don't have a 2018. So let's go back to 2018. We fix 2018
How
first.
many of us want to fix always the past? So that I'm saying if the past is wrong, let's acknowledge that it was wrong. If there's something we need to work on, then we say, how do we work on it so that it doesn't? So this power gains, it is because of our faulty thinking. Our politics don't look forward. That's why we are, in 2018, soon after
I'll quickly cross over to this call so that we have this conversation. I've got a caller that has been holding on for a long time since we're speaking. Caller, thank you so much for joining us live. May you please introduce yourself and tell us where you're calling us from.
I'm calling from South Africa. My name is Mtuma Mawere.
Yes, Mr. Mtuma Mawere, please go ahead. Yes,
yeah. When people talk of a system, sometimes we forget that there is no system without human beings. And Dr. Munyeza, you talk about the president of the country is President Mnangagwa. Do you have confidence in him as a president, as a person, not a system? Do you have confidence in the members of parliament? Do you have in those who preside over the courts? I know we've been talking about constitutionalism, rule of law. Are there any laws that come to your mind, specific laws, not system laws, that you can point to that require a different view or a different test? And finally, when you look at midnight and you look at the stars, do you see any shining stars on rule of law, constitutionalism, who stand out as people to go to when difficult questions arise as to whether to go left or right on the kind of society Zimbabwe should be?
Okay, thank you very much, my brother Mawere. Good to hear from you. It's been a while since I heard from you or talked to you. There are about 3 or 4 things that he highlights here. Number one is the confidence in the people. I've already said, I guess maybe I might have to repeat some of the things that I've been preaching about. I've been saying there's a system, but this system is under the custodian of strong men and strong women. So these strong men and strong women are actually real human beings. So the question is asking, do I have any confidence in, there is a leadership dearth, which means there is an absence of leadership. So that says it all. I have no confidence across the board of the leadership we have in this country, particularly where it is formalized in its roles. So it cuts across. So I don't want to call names that it is you, Tony, it is you, it is that one day, but across the board. Because if we had that leadership, we would not be where we are. So for me, that's a clear one, because leadership rises up to the occasion. Mm-hmm. Whenever there's a crisis, actually it is leadership that rises up to pull everybody out of a crisis. We have not. We've been plunging more into crisis, month after month. We have not been able to improve our situation, because it doesn't matter what's thrown at you as a leader. You actually turn all that. You turn a lemon into lemonade. You turn situations that were meant for bad and would be for good for you. That's what leadership is all about. So you cannot, and above all, leadership takes full responsibility for the situation. Our leadership across the board blames everyone else. They never rise up to say, look, well, we messed up here. We need now to fix this. We have to find a scapegoat. And there are too many scapegoats in our leadership structures. So that's one. The other part is talking about the laws that might need to be
sorted out. Well, we had the IPA and POSA laws which needed to be aligned. Yes, our problem is not so much about the laws, the constitution.
But for whatever reason, it is a leadership issue. For example, the electoral laws should have been lined up in before the 2013 election. So where are we? 2020, 7 years later, we've not aligned to these laws.
Okay, sorry, Dr. Munyeza, I'll cut you off so that I just pick this other call and we'll continue with this conversation. Caller, thank you so much for calling us. This is TechMac TV. Kindly introduce yourself and tell us where you're calling us from.
Okay, so I'll carry on. So, and then he goes on to say, look, do we see some bright lights in our walk? Do we see people we can go to? Or I think he was referring maybe even to laws or
constitutionalist people.
We can go to.
Correct.
Zimbabwe is blessed with a lot of people, but here's what has happened. The good people tend to run away. So it's a flight. It's a capital flight where the human says these people that are capable, that are able, that are experienced should stay in these roles. We find that they are not staying in those roles. They leave because of a leadership system that we've got that prefers mediocre leadership to rise instead of good quality leadership to be celebrated. And that's where it is.
Okay, sorry, Dr. Munyeza, I'll have to pick up the phone. Caller, thank you so much for calling us live. Would you kindly introduce yourself and tell us where you're calling us from?
Okay, you're speaking to Romeo. I'm calling from...
Romeo, welcome to the show. Please go ahead with the contribution. Dr. Munyeza is listening.
My question here is, I've been listening to Dr. Munyeza speaking, and he said we have been doing things the wrong way. The marching, the trade might not work. If Zimbabwe is to go ahead or make a decision in the future, privatization. So, that is waiting to accept dialogue. Or if you have a system that wants a dialogue that is not political,
so much.
So he's asking me what I should do or what I'm doing about this. I guess maybe the caller also got into the show a little later than when I told him my own journey, the things that. So whilst I'm an entrepreneur, I'm also a philanthropist, but I'm a pastor. So the things that I do at a local level speak for themselves. And say, look, this is not going in this direction, so we need to change our direction. I also have access to international players, whether it is partners and so on, who I can persuade to see Zimbabwe in a different way because of my tourism background. So the methods don't work, or the methods that we've been using does not work. I see that what we need to do is to make sure that this method that we must choose has to come at a place where there is a mutually hurting stalemate. And for me, that is the occasion we find ourselves in. So when everybody hurts, we need to come back to the table.
Correct. And he is saying that he thinks that these issues of toying and going around have worked before, and it seems to be the only situation that will save the only solution that will save us out. But before I let me pick up this one so we have a more broader conversation. Caller, thank you so much for calling TechMake.tv. May you please introduce yourself and tell us where you're calling us from.
My name is I'm calling from South Africa.
Please go ahead with the contribution.
Thank you, Dr. Munyeza, for the discussion and the nuggets that you are bringing to our political conversation and the society. My simple question is to me that
unfortunately, we lost that one before I could even extract to what he was trying to say, where he was going. That is very unfortunate. I wish we could have had. I'll quickly pick another caller, Doc. Caller, thank you so much for joining us. This is TechMake.tv. Please kindly introduce yourself and tell us where you're calling us from. We can hardly hear you. Please speak a little bit louder.
hello.
Yes, please go ahead with the contribution and tell us where you're calling us from. Mr. William from Kadoma, please go ahead with your contribution.
What I just want to ask is, Dr. Shingi Munyeza, I would have liked of this monsters if you rise up against them like this in public. I don't have liked that what happened to the others in the past will then happen to you the same way. Because we are afraid. The next like today, if what you're talking like this, tomorrow you are abducted or something like that will happen to you.
Thank you. Thank you for your concern about safety, because of the value proposition we have had in this country. We have had violence and some real worrying brutality, sustained brutality, a style of intolerance and impunity because of where we. So the concerns about safety for anyone who is seen as a political threat is real. But let me tell you the place I come from. I come from the fact that if there was something that was fundamentally wrong in history, and I know we don't learn from history most of the time, is that young women and young men rose up to the occasion. But they just didn't rise up to the occasion to just challenge. They rose up to the occasion to want the change, and that change, if it took their lives, it was okay.
So we don't have that resolve in the modern era. We are so consumed with self-preservation. That means that we'll never take what is rightfully ours. So I've resolved the fact that what I am doing, it might cause me to be maimed, it might cause me to be hated, that I don't mind. It might cause me to be abused, but it might cause me to be killed. I've made peace with that. That I've made peace with. What I'm not going to do is to return fire with fire. So I'm not going to play the game the way it has been played to bring about a national discourse and conversation. Violence is not going to solve this country. Abuse on the opponents or on somebody is not going to solve the problems of this country. So I have resolved those issues in my heart. I have cleaned my deck. I have signed my will. I have made it clear what happens if I go today. So that's no longer an issue for debate. So now, what is the worst thing you can do to a person like me? You kill me? I've made peace with it. You maim me? I've made peace with it. You want to abuse me? I've made peace with it. So, or you strip me of what I was given by God, whether my belongings, my assets, whatever I have, for whatever method is used. I've made peace with that.
What's your sentiment and how do you feel about people who are of strong influence as you are, but they've remained quiet against issues you're talking about? How does that make you feel?
It's a personal oh no, I have no bones to chew with anybody, whatever position they've taken. They would have assessed their situation. My journey is purely unique to me. So I can't impose this on you. But how I wish we could all make a bit of some sacrifice together.
That you don't understand that you need to treat each other as human beings.
Because we are in a self-preservative mode, we are unlikely going to get what is rightfully ours because we're always going to be dictated to. When the War of Independence started, young men and young women left school, left their localities, left their homes, and went to fight the war. And they were not promised anything. I've got family that went and never came back. They were not promised anything. But that self-sacrifice brought us independence. But there is no self-sacrifice right now because the ones that are in power, they know exactly that if I were to frighten you, you will stop what you're doing. If I frighten you hard enough and you don't respond, I try and maim you, then you must respond.
Before we close, we are now at the end of this show. Dr. Munyeza, I just need to ask you a very tricky question. Do you foresee yourself joining or starting a political movement near long-term future?
I have no interest in forming a political party. Every interest I have is to bring ourselves to a place where we reset our values again. Because our values are wrong. The way we relate to one another is totally wrong. The events, those girls whoever took them, because government doesn't know what happened there, but they were traumatized, they were abused, they were tortured. That behavior is wrong. We cannot have a society like that. If they needed to have been arrested, guess what? They should have been arrested, arraigned before the courts, charged. That's a human way of handling this. And to see that there is absolutely no voice of leadership that condemns that, that is even more worrying for me. That we don't have people in authority, our leadership, rising up and say, look, We have just realized that 3 Zimbabweans who are citizens here have been taken by some thugs so the full arm of the law is going to pursue those thugs who did this to them. And that there is no statement like that makes me weep inside. Because that's the nature of the beast that we've become as a people. Yes.
Okay, looks like a caller. I'll cut you short there so that we just converse here. Caller, thank you so much for calling us. This is Technic TV. Can you please go ahead with the contribution? Kindly tell us where you're calling us from and your name, please. We can hardly hear you. If you want to speak a little bit louder, sir. Hello? The contribution? If you may tell us who you are and where you're calling us from.
Yeah, my name is Lydia Mazorera. I'm calling you from England.
Please go ahead with your contribution, ma'am, from England. Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate that Shingi has really taken this position. And Shingi, I definitely agree with you and will be praying for you, because how can 3 girls go missing and then when they come back, nothing happens, nothing is saved? Even the police are said to be guarding them. Really? Are you not supposed to be investigating? Can you imagine? I am a parent. If you are a parent with daughters, let alone sons, and the state is not saying anything, there's definitely something wrong. So Shingi, kudos to you.
Well, thank you very much, Lydia, for your kind sentiments. I just pray that.
Sorry, can I just say I've always known you from a young school days when we were in school together.
Oh, thank you. Which school was that, Lydia?
I was at Roosevelt and you were at Prince Edward.
Okay, all right. Those were the good years.
Yeah, but I know you've got the tenacity to push.
Thank you. I guess what we need to do is to all just start looking inwardly. My real parting shot is I wish that we don't look at the other person. I wish we could look inwardly and say, which values have I portrayed out there? What kind of person do I want to be known for? That's the beginning for me. And then go on to say, look, how do I be able to influence the other person for these values? Because that is the fault line. Just the past 48 hours behavior of what has happened to those girls who went out demonstrating illegally, but should have been dealt with properly. But guess what? We are told they might have been kidnapped. But how do we live in a country like that? I just weep inside. Say, how did we get here? So we need to introspect more than we need to find out fault in the other. Because the more we introspect, we will be able, we don't need somebody to judge us. There are things we do that just the whole world gets kind of wake up and you guys, why do you do these things? Yet when Zimbabweans leave the country and go wherever they go, they are celebrated. They are known as great people. When we are here, the way we go after each other is untold. It's terrible. So, those are my parting shots. I'm sobbing inside because of what I see, but maybe it's because of my pastoral calling. I'm sobbing because we can't carry on to be these kind of people. We've got to change. But right now, we've got hunger on our doorstep. We've got economic meltdown. We've got livelihoods that have been taken away because of COVID-19 and also our economic meltdown. What are we going to do to ourselves? We got people that are supposed to be given a mealie meal to the vulnerable. Now that mealie meal is taken by those who's got an advantage or in authority, and it's being sold at the black market. What kind of people have we turned out to be? Yeah, on that sad note.
I would have wanted to ask maybe the last question that just brought me back to what you were saying, Dr. Munyeza. As far as you have been portrayed, at one point you are on the good side, at the other point you are on the bad side. I have seen state agents, or should I say ghost accounts, coming all in their numbers to attack the person of Shingi Munyeza. Recently I've been following your conversations with Charity Maodza, and some have called you that you are the Abu Mzorewa of today. How do you respond to that, and how does that make you feel?
Well, first and foremost, it comes with the territory. So I didn't arrive here today. I've been yearned for years. Be turning 54 this year, so I'm not exactly a young man. So I know that when you have got something that is valuable, it has also to be pursued. When I talk about the occult, I understand it. The occult has its own representation, which are what Mutumwa was talking. There are human beings that sustain that. So I understand when you are trying to go against people who are want to go left, and you want this thing should be going right, you're going to be the subject of attack and abuse. So I told you earlier on, I made peace with all that now. Beginning of the year, you probably realized that when I went for my holidays in December, having lost my dear father in August last year, it was a turning moment because of the last words he spoke to me about. So I began to reorder things around me. So beginning of the year, I decided to go off social media and re-engage differently. And you will see that it's different. So
you seem to have reached a certain turning point. Sorry to take you back. And with the way you have been talking and posting stuff, is it the death of your father, or what's changed you? Because most of these things you seem to be talking about, they have been there. They're not very new to the Zimbabwean ecosystem. What has changed Shingi Munyeza's perception?
We grow. I think we grow. The death of my dad contributed to that as well, but we grow. It is not a painful place, except for the loss, but it triggered something in my own spirit because of the things he said when I last spoke to him, because he died in his sleep. But more so, it is also where we are as a people. I'm beginning to ask questions. Is this the legacy I want to leave for my... And also, end of the year, my daughter got married. So there's a lot of things that began to speak to me to say, look, so maybe sooner rather than later, I'm going to be a grandfather. So is this the country that I want to leave them with? Surely it is not. So what can I do? I must throw everything that I've got to do my bit, but not always to cower away from doing something because I want to preserve myself. Because I realized I could be here in this country, I could be staying in the UK, I could be staying in South Africa because of my business interests. But I decided that I would do something for the last kind of stretch, do something for my country. And it is to bring people to a realization that the way we had gone is wrong. That day when we all sit at a table and want to correct it, my job is done.
We can go on and on and on, but it has been a very much interesting and eye-opening interview that we had here, and wish we had much more time, but it's already late and we are still live in the studio. And I hopefully hope that through you we'll get another time, Dr. Munyeza, to get to discuss and allow Zimbabweans to also converse with you, so that we do this dialogue at our own level, as you've already instructed, and we get to grow our nation better. I know I may have denied you the last parting shots, the last time I cut you off and I took you back to the interview. If you can shoot your last parting shot before we call it off.
Well, to your audience and listeners and viewers, I just want to say first thank you to you, Tony, for inviting me. I don't think that it's a right for me to be here. It's just a joy to be able to connect with fellow Zimbabweans out there. Most of them, I think, who would be connecting at this time would be in the diaspora. And I know the full price they have paid. Our family out there, they paid a huge price. Make sure that families here are sustained. Families here have a life. And my heart goes out to them because now some of them are not working. Job losses in the US, job losses in the UK, in Europe. And in South Africa, we have some of our people coming back because of the situation that is there. We've got busloads of Zimbabweans coming back. And I just want to say at this juncture is to just thank you all, particularly the guys in the diaspora, because your contribution to the fiscus has not gone unnoticed, because I know the value you have brought in to sustain lives, to buy drugs, by the money that you send here. I also want to thank those who have stayed and to say, God bless you. Our journey is not yet over. Actually, it's going to get worse as we go ahead. Let's brace up. Let's look within ourselves for solutions. Let's not find blame, but let's look at within ourselves and see how we can change. But when we've done that, in love, without fear or favor. Let's seek to build one another. Let's seek to build our nation. Let's seek to walk even in our differences, in our diversities, and embrace one another. Because we are Zimbabweans. Unfortunately, our toxicity and our polarity and our values have separated us. That can change. I'm confident it will change. I'm looking forward to a Zimbabwean that is born again. And I don't mean this just in the Christian sense, but a rebirth of a nation. A nation that behaves totally different and that the globe can embrace and work with, so that we start our nation building and be a better people. God bless you, and may the light of the Lord shine upon you. May his face shine upon you. May you continue to aspire for better for our country, and may you be protected from COVID-19, and that you are safe, that this pandemic, we will go over it. Doesn't matter how long it will take. May the Lord bless you.
And of course, you have heard it straight from Dr. and Pastor Shingi Munyeza, passionate plea to get back Zimbabwe to work once more again. We do appreciate you guys, and we do thank you to all who have been watching us live right here. This is www.techmec.tv. You are watching us live on Facebook, we are live on Twitter, we are also live on our Facebook page. We do appreciate you all, guys. Remember to also like, share, and hit the notification bell, so that next time we get back live, we'll be able to have you guys to join us. We do thank you, we do appreciate your time, and for one more last time, it's a goodbye, it's a wrap. We'll see you next time when we get back live again. Ciao, ciao.